Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So I wanted to bring to you another video once again, and this video is entitled The Adultification of Black Girls. And I don't think people realize that Black girls are viewed, some don't realize that Black girls are viewed differently than girls that aren't Black. And this is by Roberta Nin Feliz. So the results of a recently published Georgetown law study that found Black girls experience adultification early on, of course, or are seen as older or less innocent than their white counterparts. It might be surprising to some, but certainly not to those in the Black community. While this study isn't the first to validate the inequitable experiences of Black women and Blackness in general, this study reflects the specific experience of Black girls. So many Black girls are familiar with being seen as more adult than their peers. Hearing comments like being told to cover up when I was going through puberty made me feel like I was older and more mature than my age. That perception of maturity gave me an awareness about the world that I wished I had come to a lot later in life. And I wasn't the only one. I witnessed my friends being told these same things too. So comments like these undoubtedly contribute to the significantly higher suspension rates of Black girls compared to white counterparts. It's why our parents coach us from young age on how to act like a lady and respect our elders. They know that the world stopped seeing us as children long before we stopped being them. So it seems clear that when we are projecting these perceptions onto Black girls as early as age 5, that's a critical stage of development in life. Rebecca Epstein, one of the authors of the Georgetown study, NPR, and it does last, according to our research, all the way up through high school years. So the adultification can be separated from the objectification of hypersexualization that has marked Black women's presence in the Americas or United States since slavery. In Black bodies, white bodies, toward an iconography of female sexuality in late 19th century art, medicine, literature. Sanders Gilman, a professor of liberal arts and sciences, and at Emory University, argues that the presence of Black servants in the 19th century art served to sexualize the environment in which they existed and to juxtapose their purport licentiousness with the purity of the white people who surrounded them, usually white women. So, for example, in The Servant, a print created by Australian artist Frans van Beijers, the overt sexuality of the Black child indicates the covert sexuality of the white woman. So Gilman writes this: as racism became ingrained in society overall, so did these specific attitudes about Black females, Black women. So the Black body and the Black women by default were seen as hypersexualized, and sexuality is something intricately linked to adulthood in our society. So the adultification of Black girls is additionally exacerbated by America's inability to let Black children just be children, and the propensity to inflict violence on them. It's why cops confuse 12-year-olds Tamir Rice with an adult man before killing him, and why they also perceive Tatiana Hargrove as a Black man before tackling and beating her. This adultification not only hinders Black girls' childhood, therefore, but reiterates the social practices that punish us more and give us less emotional support and push us into school to prison pipeline. As Epstein told NPR, as girls are forming their view of the world and their place in it and their relationship to others, they are getting this feedback that they don't need nurturing or protection. And so this is what a lot of Black women have felt, that we're not protected, we're not represented or underrepresented, and we don't get the backing from our own peers and people in our own nationalities or cultures. Sometimes we're not protected by our own Black males, at least not enough. And so it's likely to very much affect their long-term outcomes, including their outlook on life as adults. Considering the racial and sexist climate in the world right now, if anyone needs to be supported and nurtured and be allowed to be children and walk through life like so, it's Black girls. So think twice the next time you want to tell a Black girl that she is so grown or she's so fast. Or Black girls, and this is what I've heard a teacher say at a school, and this was not that long ago, and she was a white teacher. Black girls develop faster than white girls did. So remember that before anything else, Black girls are just that, girls, children who need to be treated as such. And so I thought this was very fitting, because a lot of times this also perpetuates the stereotypes as well about how different Black children are versus white children or children who are non-Black or not considering themselves. So let's say that, because there are a lot of other people who have a Black parent, or they have Black grandparents, or they have Black family members, and they also have Black in them, but they consider themselves other. And so these are the things that a lot of times people fail to realize, that affects Black girls all through childhood, from starting as early as age 5. Usually that what they say is the first 5 years are the most critical years of the lives of children and how they will thrive. And so if you have the adultification of Black girls early on as 5 years old, emotionally, what does that do to the woman? Emotional, mental, psyche, and throughout their years of maturity level and growing, and all through till they get to high school and college. And so these are the things that a lot of people don't want to share. There's a lot of pride in the Black community. There's a lot of pride with Black women as well, particularly why we won't admit if we're in a relationship that has to do with domestic violence. We usually try to keep it to ourselves and maintain, because we don't want to blaspheme, or we don't want to put a blemish on the Black community by complaining about Black males being abusive and overly aggressive. But this can happen in any culture as well, and in any race of background of a person. But when it happens in the Black community as a whole, we are, as women, told to handle yourself or maintain yourself, or you need to pray. And a lot of it has to do with religion and religion ideology. And so a lot of times women are told to pray, told to fast, they're told to go to a religious counselor or to marriage counseling, or they'll try to hide their true feelings on what is going on in a relationship because of all of the problems that have usually come with staying in a relationship and maintaining it, especially if you're with an abuser, somebody who has issues with alcohol, have issues with drugs, have issues with, maybe they're just aggressive. Maybe the person that they're involved with also in their childhood have witnessed domestic violence, and they grow up to become the very person that they don't want to be is an abuser. So these are things that I wanted to share because I feel like a lot of times people are not honest. They choose not to be honest, and they choose not to really look at what is really happened in some of these households with some of these young girls and these women. And so we've seen videos, even it's not just Black women also, but Black women are usually hypersexualized in videos, music videos. Even, you know, you could have a really cool song. There's a lot of songs I like to listen to, but some of those videos from the 80s and 90s sometimes will have women in those videos who are viewed at as video vixens, and they're hypersexualized. Sometimes they'll be wearing a bathing suit. They'll be wearing really scantily clad outfits. And so they're hypersexualized as early on as little girls in grade school, and pretty much told to grow up fast. And if you're living in neighborhoods where you're surrounded by adult situations, or you're viewed as being, oh, you're old enough, or you can understand this, or you're grown, you act too grown. You see where I'm coming from with that. And so a lot of that is objectified onto Black women. And as early on as like 5, 6 years old. And so some of these girls will fall into a trap. If they're not headed for college and they're not headed for something positive, if they're in a home where there's a lot of environment that they're surrounded by, which pretty much puts them in a place where they're not looked at as children always. They're looked at as you can handle your own. You'll see a lot of these girls will end up being young mothers. They will end up falling into those traps, and they'll end up becoming dropouts. And they will get into relationships with people who have the same mentality as well, who maybe they've come from situations and environment. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the home immediate. If you're put in a situation where you have to live in subpar neighborhoods and go to subpar schooling, then this is the result of what you will get. And so it's always not just the parents alone. So sometimes people are put into situations where it may take a lot more doing to try to curb your child or to curb your son or daughter out of gangs, out of teen pregnancy, and things that are so available. And we've seen this has happened even in other communities. And so if you're put in a situation where you're not given opportunities versus your counterparts or your white counterparts, then you're going to see that result. And so there may be a fraction of children or a fraction of young people who won't fall prey to this, but there's going to be some that are going to end up being your future teen moms. There are going to be some that are going to be involved in gang activity. There's going to be some that are going to go off into a life of crime and become career criminals. And so these are the types of things that parents worry about. And sometimes you can be the best parents, and still all of the influences that are out there will sometimes be more stronger of an influence in the child's life than the parents alone. And so if you look at today, the way the world is now, we have the internet, the superhighway. So you have all of these influences. You have Instagram, you have YouTube, you have all of these sites, Facebook, and all these places where kids can access, teens can access and see everything. Used to be that you could put parental control on certain things that your child viewed or listened to, and that is no more. And so even in the 80s, I remember when internet wasn't as big as it is now, there would be music that parents wouldn't want children to listen to. But when the children leave the home and they're amongst their friends and their peers from school, what do you think they're going to be wearing and listening to? Wearing the clothes that you don't want them to wear and listening to the music that you don't really allow them to listen to in the home. So they're going to have access to it. And there's also this beautiful thing we call peer pressure as well. And so I'm mentioning these things in addition to the adultification of Black girls and children, because we've had famous entertainers such as Denzel Washington say that it starts in the home. But what he hasn't mentioned is that also there are lots of influences that are even today more so than they were when we were growing up as children. And you have the internet, and what do kids do when they leave the house? They go somewhere and change their clothes and put on the clothes they want to wear. They go with their friends that are more of a higher influence, more of their age level, their peers, and they listen to the music that you don't want them listening to in your house. They say the things that you don't want them, or the language that you don't want them speaking. They say that amongst their peers because they want to fit in. And so a lot of that is outside influences as well. And see, these people, they say all this stuff because they want to bring about all of this likes and thumbs up and claps and high fives, but they don't tell you all of these other things that are also influencing young girls, young boys as well, and what young people think are quote unquote cool, or what they think is what is hip, or what is now, or what is trendy, or what is more appealing. And so this is the things that people are not mentioning. And then when you have adults that already look at Black girls as being more mature than white girls, what do you think comes with that? You can only fill in the blanks. And so here's the other thing I wanted to add to this, is that you also have other Black women that are on these websites that will blame Black women for their demise. They'll say, oh, it's what you attract. Instead of them looking at all of the other things that are outwardly that have caused problems in the lives of Black people as a whole and as women in the Black community, they blame Black women also. They beat each other up, and they'll beat another woman up because they feel like you have made us victims, or you made us the centerpiece for the destruction of the Black community. And those are lies. That is not true. And so you'll have women that'll write books, and you'll have women that'll say things that aren't true about Black women. They make it look as though Black women are even more demonized by other Black women who claim that they're trying to help the community when they're also harming it even more. And so we have that in some of these famous people that you see that, you know, sometimes they'll come from another country and they'll write books and then they'll make fun of the dialects and the way Black people spoke when they were enslaved, or when they had broken English, or they didn't speak a certain way because they were forming sentences, because a lot of things were kept from Black people. It wasn't meant, in the beginning, it wasn't meant for us to learn to read and write and to become educated and to achieve academia. And so we have some people now that are pretty big, well-known people who get center stage attention and platforms to speak on behalf of Black people as a whole, but they make us look as though that we're less than. They don't lift us up in the community, and they don't have our best interest invested because they don't come from the same culture as American blacks do. They come from maybe Africa or Nigeria, they come from somewhere else, and so they will also sometimes be uh, a centerpiece or a mouthpiece for white America to pretty much denigrate other black females and other black people. And so I wanted to mention that because there was a video that I had witnessed where a young man had brought out a young lady who is, I guess she's a big speaker. And I'm not going to say her name, but I know her face and I can see her. I believe, I was trying to not say her name, but I'll say it. I believe her name is Lovey. And so a lot of times you'll have people from different places who will make books, they'll make commentary, and they can be educated people who come from relatively a good family upbringing or background, and their experiences are altogether different than American black girls' experience because they didn't grow up here in America. And so they may have come from families where the father and the mother were together and they had a close-knit family, and their experiences in Nigeria is altogether different than what the experiences of black people are here in America is in the nuclear family. And so what types of traumas and tragedies that have happened in America is different than what has happened in Nigeria or what has happened in Somalia or what has happened in Africa somewhere. And so a lot of times you'll have other cultures that will speak for a black community when they are not a part of the black community in America. They'll speak on issues that have to do with American politics when they were in Nigeria. And so, not to say it to be mean, but these are real problems that we've also faced in the black community here in America, is that we'll have speakers that speak on us that don't have similar backgrounds and really don't know the experiences because they haven't lived them. And so they pretty much will make a book and then they'll be judgmental and critical of other black people because they have the same face or phenotypically they look or appear to be as though they're a part of the black community, when unbeknownst to white community, they don't realize that these people are not American blacks. They're black people from another country who had a totally different set of experiences. So I'm pretty much reiterating that or re-saying that because I've seen this happen a lot, where even some people will look at people and assume that we all are the same. And so that's why I get in my videos, I'll say that we don't all come from the same neighborhoods. We don't all have the same languages or ideologies. We have different beliefs or sets of beliefs. We've grown up in different households. Some people have come from other countries. They may look like they're black like us, and they may well be, but they're not from the same tribe. Let's say that. Okay? And so I could use that as a term because I believe that would be more fitting, because what cultures are here in the Americas is different from what cultures are in Nigeria or in Somalia or in Zimbabwe. And so, and in South Africa, it may be different as well. And so the experiences that are there are not similarly the same as what American blacks have experienced. And so we need to stop allowing platforms for people to speak on Black America when they aren't a part of Black America. They just live in Black America. And so I thought this was beneficial to bring this out, because this puts also a bad name on Black people as well. And so I'm going to leave this video with that. I just thought this was an interesting article. It comes from out of Women's Media Circle, or Women's Media Center, that is. And so I feel like a lot of times that Black women will get the short end of the stick, and it starts a lot earlier than you think. Thanks for listening.